Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother, wings for freedom. On behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Добрый вечер, good evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to Tochnyi. We recognize an ally when we see them. We all recognize attempted intimidation when we see it. Support your friends, not your enemies. Make the right choice. These principles we inculcate into those younger than us, with the lives of millions under the US president's own choices, with millions of lives on the line. Welcome to Tochnyi. Please subscribe to Tochnyi on Blue Sky, X, YouTube. Please check out our website, which has many recent research posts, including an article by Erlend, extremely relevant to this week's events pertaining to potential scenarios facing any peacekeeping mission under the current status in bello by European troops in Ukraine. We genuinely really appreciate all of your support since we migrated from Elon's X over 2 years ago. I will hand over now to Joseph for the news.
These are the main headlines as of March 2nd, 2025. First up, we have operations. An individual from Ukraine's National Security Council said that a major oil processing plant near Ryazan was targeted, noting that it produces fuel crucial for Russian air operations. This marks the third time this year that Ukrainian forces have targeted the important site, which ranks among Russia's largest oil refining facilities. The governor also mentioned on social media that a fire broke out at the plant after debris from intercepted drones caused sparks. Meanwhile, Russian defense authorities confirmed that they intercepted 22 Ukrainian drones overnight, including 2 spotted over the area southeast of Moscow. South Korea's intelligence agency disclosed on the 27th of February that North Korea sent additional forces to assist Russian units in their ongoing engagements with Ukrainian troops in the Kursk Oblast. While the exact number remains unconfirmed, anonymous sources cited in South Korean media suggest that between 1,000 and 3,000 soldiers have been deployed. Earlier intelligence indicated that North Korea already committed around 12,000 troops to the region to back up Russia, with subsequent efforts highlighting severe losses among those ranks, figures reaching up to approximately 4,000 according to Ukrainian sources. South Korean analysts are still assessing the current scale of the fresh reinforcement, particularly after previous encounters where North Korean contingents suffered significant setbacks against Ukrainian units. The latest update from the intelligence service noted that the reinforcements began participating in combat operations in early February, although details on their numbers remain under review. Over 1,000 North Korean personnel reached Russia between January and February through maritime departures from Chongjin and by rail from Rason, with the use of these varied transportation methods complicating tracking efforts. Other estimates from regional media align with the idea that the new force comprises between 1,000 and 3,000 soldiers. In an interview with a Ukrainian news outlet, Ukraine's top intelligence official, Kirill Budanov, indicated that the Russian military unit operating on the African continent is not slowing down, but is in fact increasing its operations. He explained that although some argue Russia is facing setbacks in Africa, their underlying goal appears to be controlling a string of countries that cut across the continent from east to west, establishing a route that all other countries must follow. Budanov noted that while Russian plans have been effectively dismantled in several nations, they continue this effort. After being forced to leave Syria, Russian forces have redirected their focus toward establishing a presence in Libya, following a systematic pattern of redeployment. He also mentioned that similar shifts are underway elsewhere, with challenges in Latin America leading Russia to redirect its focus to Central Asia and even maintaining a military presence in Myanmar. Up next, we have economy and aid. The Danish government recently announced an assistance package valued at 2 billion Danish kroner, which is around 268 million euros, for Ukraine. On the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion, Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen highlighted the need for Ukraine to secure the strongest possible position. The allocated funds are set to support the supply of ammunition to Ukrainian forces and help build a brigade-sized unit in cooperation with the Nordic and Baltic nations. During official events in Kyiv alongside European Union leadership and other European heads of state, the Prime Minister expressed pride in Denmark's leadership in providing support to Ukraine. She stressed the urgency of continuing the support by expediting weapon deliveries and further investing in Ukraine's defense sector, noting that current actions will have a lasting impact on the future of Ukraine and Europe. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that Canada will deliver additional military support and financial aid to Ukraine, funded by previously frozen Russian assets. The support package includes the delivery of 25 more LAV-3 infantry fighting vehicles and 2 armored combat support vehicles, with the latter intended for upcoming training exercises in Germany. Canada plans also to provide a satellite system for the F-16 and 4 trainer machines for these aircraft, with these assets expected to arrive in the coming months. The new contribution adds to an extensive supply of ammunition, equipment, and first aid kits already provided to Ukraine earlier in the year. The aid package also features a financial commitment of 5 billion Canadian dollars, which includes a grant to help Ukraine safeguard its energy security after disruptions to its infrastructure by Russia. Also, Ukraine's primary defense industry organization, Ukroboronprom, has reached an agreement with the Canadian firm Rochelle to produce armored personnel carriers domestically. According to a Telegram update, the Ukrainian side will obtain the technical specifications and necessary components to manufacture the vehicles, which are already in service with its armed forces. The Ukrainian Minister for Strategic Industries explained that by shifting production to local facilities, the delivery time to frontline units will be reduced. The national economy will also receive a boost, and domestic manufacturers will gain access to more advanced technologies. The head of Ukroboronprom also confirmed that Ukraine is continuing to develop its own range of tanks and armored combat vehicles, and that the Ingwar 3 vehicle has successfully completed its field evaluations and started to secure orders. The Norwegian government has announced a plan to spend 3.5 billion Norwegian kroner, roughly 300 million euros, to buy military equipment directly from Ukraine's defense sector. An extra 600 million Norwegian kroner, or 50 million euros, will be set aside for acquiring various drone systems and advancing unmanned technology for Ukraine's armed forces. The Prime Minister stated that by purchasing military gear directly from Ukrainian producers, Norway is not only supplying needed equipment, but also helping boost the country's own production capabilities. Previously, a 500 million Norwegian kroner investment was made in November 2024 to fund weapon production by Ukrainian enterprises. The Norwegian authorities also plan to collaborate with domestic firms to build a cooperative relationship with Ukraine, aiming to share technology and expertise, a prospect which would benefit both sides. A significant delegation from Norwegian business circles recently visited Ukraine to explore further opportunities for such partnerships. A new scheme was also introduced for 2025 intended to lower risks for Norwegian companies investing in or exporting to Ukraine. Also, the Norwegian firm Kongsberg Defence and Aerospace, out of Erlend, is actively pursuing a plan to create a collaborative manufacturing operation in Ukraine. In a recent interview, the company's president explained that discussions are underway with local industry to form a joint venture aimed at significantly increasing the production of missiles for air defense systems using Ukrainian technology. The effort aims for mass production with plans to produce hundreds of missiles, and the new partnership is expected to be established in the coming months. He emphasized that the initiative is being developed with a view toward lasting cooperation and sees a future in which Ukraine becomes an integral part of the supply network for the defense systems once current hostilities conclude. The president further noted that there is considerable technological progress taking place in Ukraine and that his company is eager to contribute to and benefit from the advancements. Denmark has entered into an agreement with the Norwegian-Finnish defense firm Nammo to manufacture artillery shells, with production set to take place at a facility in northern Jutland, as reported by a local newspaper. In an effort to boost domestic production capabilities, the Danish Defense Ministry announced plans to repurchase the former ammunition Sarsanelet plant, Erlend, in northern Jutland during 2023. The historic facility, originally built in the 17th century, was sold in 2008 for approximately $2.4 million to a Spanish ammunition manufacturer. Despite its sale, the plant continued to produce weaponry and provide services to the Ministry of Defense, remaining a vital supplier until a persistent financial issue led to shutdown and complete liquidation in 2020. Following its closure, the facility and its remaining infrastructure were sold to private investors who converted the area into a technology park, marking the end of a long-standing local enterprise and the halt of ammunition production in Denmark. The Danish government later invested around 20 million kroner, or 2.6 million euros, to regain control of the site, which spans around 18,000 square meters and includes 50 buildings. Nammo, recognized as one of Europe's foremost ammunition manufacturers, is expected to support Ukraine by supplying artillery shells. Additionally, it was revealed in 2024 that Nammo is also set to commence the production of 155mm shells using technology provided by Nammo. The International Monetary Fund and Ukrainian officials have reached staff-level agreement on the 7th review of the 4-year extended fund facility valued at $15.5 billion, which, pending IMF Executive Board approval, clears the way for an additional installment of around $400 million. The latest disbursement increases the total funds released under the program to around $10 billion. The IMF noted that program performance remains robust, with all quantitative performance targets for the end of last year being met and mutual understandings established on a comprehensive set of policies and reforms designed to sustain macroeconomic stability. Since February 20th, the IMF mission has been working in Kyiv and Warsaw, and progress on structural reforms continues with 7 key milestones achieved, 1 milestone implemented later than planned, and solid commitments to make further important reforms. The report stated that restoring fiscal sustainability over the medium term depends on rigorous reforms to boost domestic revenue, reduce tax evasion and avoidance, and enhance the investment climate. The effort should be supported by improvements in tax administration and ongoing reforms within the state customs service and tax service. Achieving debt sustainability will rely on these revenue-focused adjustments as well as on the continuation of the government's debt restructuring strategy. The report further stressed the need for enhanced independence, competence, and credibility in anti-corruption and judicial institutions, pointing to the recent parliamentary adoption of legislation to establish a high administrative court as an important step forward. Swift implementation of this legislation will facilitate the rapid formation of the court, a move seen as crucial for effective public investment management. This management is said to be a key factor in post-war recovery, reconstruction, and sustainable growth. Finally, while the financial sector is currently stable, ongoing caution is advised given the existing risks. Developing robust financial markets and infrastructure is essential to support rapid reconstruction and recovery by stimulating private investment and attracting foreign capital. Close collaboration with financial market stakeholders is also said to be vital to formulating a prioritized reform agenda, a process that the National Bank of Ukraine has begun in coordination with relevant parties. On February 24th, the UK government unveiled its most extensive set of restrictions on Russia since the onset of the full-scale invasion. The announcement, shared via a government press release, stressed the country's steadfast commitment to support of Ukraine. The new sanctions list targets 107 individuals and organizations involved in producing and supplying machinery, electronics, and dual-use items crucial for Russia's military, including microprocessors integral to weapon systems sourced from a variety of third-country intermediaries in Central Asia, Turkey, Thailand, India, and China. The measures also extend to high-ranking officials from North Korea, including its defense minister and other senior figures who played a role in deploying over 11,000 North Korean personnel in support of Russia. For the first time, the UK also imposed restrictions on foreign financial institutions that facilitate Russia's military expenditures, specifically naming a Kyrgyzstan-based bank to disrupt Russia's access to international finance. Additional sanctions have been designed to further impact Russia's energy revenues, which remain a critical source of funding for its operations, by targeting another group of 40 oil tankers identified as part of the Shadow Fleet. Market sources indicate that shipments of Russian crude from the Far East and Iranian oil to China are set to resume in March. This change comes as non-sanctioned vessels have joined the transportation routes, effectively replacing those that were affected by the U.S. embargo. Analysts say that restarting these shipments could ease earlier concerns about supply shortages, which had contributed to higher global oil prices. An analyst from a major energy data firm observed that freight charges for tankers carrying crude oil from Kozmino port in Russia's Far East to China have increased substantially. As a result, at least 17 tankers free of U.S. sanctions have been assigned to this route over the past month. Some of these vessels were previously involved in transporting oil from regions like the Baltic or were engaged in moving petroleum products. Additional market data shows that a number of tankers not covered by the embargo have recently joined the shipments between Russia and China. One factor contributing to increased export volumes is a reduction in processing at Russian refineries, an impact linked to Ukrainian drone operations that has left more crude available for export. On February 28th, NBC reported that the U.S. State Department had ended a major USAID program that had allocated hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars to repair Ukraine's energy grid, which had suffered significant damage from Russian military operations during the ongoing invasion. 2 USAID officials involved in the Ukraine mission indicated that the decision comes as several regions are experiencing overnight power outages caused by continued strikes on energy facilities. One official explained that halting the project may weaken the current administration's position in ceasefire negotiations and send a signal to Russia that prior investments in Ukraine are no longer a priority. USAID has played a critical role in helping Ukraine stabilize its economy by supporting their energy grid. Alongside the termination of this project, USAID is drastically reducing its operational footprint in Ukraine. Previously, 64 American government employees and contractors were stationed in the country, but that number will fall to just 8 as non-essential personnel are ordered to return to the United States. The move is part of a broader reduction in staffing for USAID's Bureau for Europe and Eurasia, which now will see its Washington, D.C.-based team decrease from 115 to 29 employees. Officials warn that these reductions could leave Ukraine's energy infrastructure increasingly vulnerable during the winter months as Russian missile strikes continue. Finally, we have foreign relations. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio outlined the closest thing he has to a plan to address Russia's close ties with China. He noted that Washington aims to lessen the ties without creating conflict between the two nuclear-armed nations. Rubio indicated uncertainty about whether the U.S. could ever completely separate Russia from its engagement with China and warned that pitting the two against each other would be harmful to global stability given their significant military capabilities. Rubio also raised the risk of a scenario where Russia might become excessively dependent on China, which would leave Moscow little flexibility to improve its ties with Washington due to economic reliance on Chinese markets and diplomatic support from Beijing. He argued that this would ultimately be disadvantageous for U.S. interests. Also, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directed U.S. Cyber Command to suspend any plans for digital actions against Russia, including any offensive operations. The directive was communicated to Cyber Command's chief, General Timothy Haag, who then passed it on to his team. However, the order does not extend to the National Security Agency, which Haag also leads, nor does it affect its signals intelligence activities aimed at Russia. Sources indicated that the move might disrupt some of the command's most significant operations targeting a major digital adversary, including those linked to activities in Ukraine. Finally this week, and if you read the news, the only thing that actually happened, during a high-profile Oval Office meeting last Friday, President Trump sharply criticized President Zelensky for what he described as a lack of proper courtesy, and then unexpectedly halted the signing of a minerals agreement that, according to Trump, would have advanced Ukraine's efforts to end its war with Russia. The cancellation of the deal, which was expected to grant the United States increased access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals and was to be announced jointly in a press conference, now raises questions about its future and broader implications for international affairs, particularly in Europe. Trump maintained that the minerals agreement was critical for the United States to recover some of the aid that was provided to Kyiv since the start of the war. Following a contentious exchange, senior advisors requested that Zelensky leave the White House, marking an abrupt end to the meeting. During the confrontation, Trump warned that Ukraine was taking dangerous risks that could have severe global repercussions and criticized Zelensky for failing to show due respect to the United States, a nation that in his view had supported Ukraine far more than others. The final 10 minutes of the nearly 45-minute meeting devolved into a tense dialogue involving Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Zelensky. The Ukrainian leader, meanwhile, expressed his reservations regarding Russia's commitment to diplomacy, citing a long history of unfulfilled promises and broken treaties by Moscow. And on that depressing note, those were the headlines this week. We'll now move to the next segment.
Yeah, and that would be me. Hello guys, as always I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. This week, however, not a lot noteworthy happened, so I just have a single item to present. On Tuesday, an EU delegation has handed over 25 Volkswagen Amarok pickups, which were co-financed by the German government, to the National Police of Ukraine. According to the NPU, these vehicles will increase the capabilities and capacities of the police to operate in areas closer to the front line. And yeah, as I already said, that's it for my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Very quickly, I just wanted to cover just a little bit of extra news bits that I didn't quite get into the broadcast and squeeze into the broadcast in time. So one thing that happened after, or I guess it wasn't really worth covering as like actual news, but just there was basically universal support for Ukraine and Zelensky expressed by almost every European leader, at least that I saw, like everyone basically except Hungary and I think Slovakia. So just like very strong unanimity from European leaders, at least in their rhetoric about what happened. And then I just want to talk to Erlend. Oh, and then there was a report of the UK and Ukraine signing a loan agreement. Obviously, we're happy that the loan agreement proceeded, but we just wanted to say like that's kind of old news. Like it was already announced months and months ago. So while it's good and while it's great that it got done and everything, we don't really consider that a new development. So you might have seen that in the news. It's kind of something that was agreed to last summer. It's great that it's moving forward. But I want to talk to Erlend a little bit. I already covered some of the stuff going on with Norway. Norway just sent a like small military aid package to Ukraine for drones and stuff. They're trying to start collaborating more with not just the defense industry, but I would say just industry in general. They're trying to make it easier for Norwegian businesses. And there were a few other developments this week that we wanted to go over. So the first was there's some discussion in Parliament about maybe increasing aid. And real quick, I should just mention for our audience, the reason Norwegian aid in Norway is kind of an important player in this is they have a lot of wealth. They have a big sovereign wealth fund. They have the ability, because of the change in the whole gas scenario in Europe, they have a lot of income from that, and they have the ability to really change the game here if they kind of figure out how to do this politically. So that's why we're so interested in Norway, and I wanted to kind of check in because there were some developments. So Mr. Erlend, there was some discussion in Parliament this week about not only a new budget, I think that would include more aid to Ukraine, but also some discussion, and this is much less serious, but some discussion about maybe getting more serious with the sovereign wealth fund in Ukraine. So I just wanted you to cover any developments going on in the local press.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that the thing with the gas and the extra income, since Russia started started preparing for the invasion of Ukraine in 2021, gas prices drastically increased. Of course, then Europe shut off most of its gas supplies from Russia, except from ocean-carried LNG, which is still happening to some degree. Norway benefited massively by that. And it's estimated by the Ministry of Finance in Norway that about 1,200 billion kroners is the extra income that we have earned on this in 2022 and 2023. And third-party analysts estimate the extra income to be more than double that total.
How many euros is that, Erlend?
So that's around more than 200 billion euros, just on top of what we normally would have expected. But the thing is that this is projected to continue for more or less indefinite until we stop, pumping up gas and oil, really. So the estimates of the overall possible extra income that we would have not expected if it wasn't for Russia's aggression are in the thousands of billions of kroners. There's this moral question: is this war profiteering? I think it's a little bit far off to call it automatically war profiteering, but when there is a question about how much we should be giving compared to the rest of countries in Europe, because we have this advantage, let's say it that way. When that has not been addressed within the framework that we're earning more because of the war, and like the politicians have completely refused to acknowledge this as a factor of what we should, or for how much we should give. And when that is a fact, I think it's more or less going towards war profiteering. But there are some strange lines there, and it's hard to kind of define it. The development hasn't really been in Parliament yet, but since we talked last time about Norwegian government stuff, the government has fallen, and there's a new government with only one of the parties that were in the last government. It's a minority government made up of only the Labour Party, where previously also the Central Party were a part of the government. They're gone. That doesn't necessarily automatically mean better for Ukraine, but it should, because the Central Party is not really that interested in Ukraine, it seems. And also you basically only have one party to litigate with and put pressure on. It's also easier for them to reach over to the rest of the opposition now, basically bypassing the Central Party. And what's developed in the last week or 2 weeks in Norway is that several of the regional congresses has been held in the Labour Party, which they do every 2 years, and they're preparing for the National Congress, which is coming up soon. And basically all of them are decided on this policy that they will bring forward to the rest of the party, where they want to triple the aid within 2025. That would bring it to about 105 billion kroners, which amounts to a little bit less than 9 billion euros, I think. And that's important. That would be a massive boost for Ukraine, of course.
Yeah, and I think an official also remarked this week in the government that like we need to start talking about using the sovereign wealth fund to help Ukraine, or was that did I miss something?
A lot of different people have been saying this. There was a letter signed by more than 40 university professors in economics about this. Previous leader of the sovereign wealth fund, previous central bank manager. But from the government side, there hasn't been anyone saying that. But there's been several members of parliament from the Labour Party who's saying, yeah, we should be thinking differently about the sovereign wealth fund with regards to Ukraine.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. So I just had heard a couple of, when I'm reading through the news reports, I noticed several things from Norway, but I wanted to get some clarification on those too. And I reported on the other stuff. So great. Thanks, Erlend. And then the other stuff I want to talk about, because it's semi-Norway related, is NATAM, of course. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but the N stands for Norwegian, if you ask Norway. The NATAMs, there was a report about the NATAM just being super successful in Ukraine. Like it had a lot of successful interception. It performed very well. And then I think there's some talk, I don't know how much we're going to talk about this, but there's some discussion about replacing the ammunition for the systems, or was that something else, or was I confusing that? So just NASAM stuff. Were there any good NASAMS developments that we should talk about?
Well, Kongsberg has announced, the president or CEO of Kongsberg announced in an interview that Kongsberg is opening shop in Ukraine. I knew that for a while. They decided to go down that route more than 1.5 years ago, but the necessary legislation and preparations took way too much time, of course. They were now, as far as I understood, far into to opening that company in Ukraine. I'm not sure about the construction, etc. But the interesting bits and pieces that he gave is that there's an agreement with local industry in Ukraine to produce what he said, mass production of missiles for NASAMS with local Ukrainian technology. He said we're talking about hundreds of missiles, and I don't know what that means exactly. There's been some conflicting information about that. Is it refurbishment of European stockpiles that no one can do in Europe right now, where there's a low capacity, or is it to integrate a Ukrainian-made missile in NASAMS 3?
So I guess we'll keep everyone posted if we learn anything more about that. But just some interesting developments. It seems like Norway's on the right track. Obviously, we want to see more movement on the sovereign wealth fund issue, but it's good people are talking about it, I guess. Any other last stuff you want to talk about with Norway?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the problem here really is that the prime minister we have is very reluctant to do anything proactively. So everything positive that we're going to see is because he's being pushed, and the government basically is pushing him internally.
Keep pushing, guys. I know you're very polite, but just very politely push him. Thank you. Great stuff to hear. Thanks, Erlend, for that update on Norway. And so we'll see everyone next week. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
On behalf of the brave.